The moist, cold air of the catacombs seared the skin of the young archaeologist as he carefully descended the stone staircase leading into the depths of the earth. This researcher, named Edward Halloran, considered himself fortunate to have the opportunity to explore the ancient catacombs beneath the Catholic Church of St. Agathon. He practically breathed history, and this archaeological project seemed like a dream finally coming true. For the first few days, Edward immersed himself in studying maps and records about the church and its history. He stumbled upon mentions of the catacombs that had never been documented in official records. These underground chambers had remained in the shadows of centuries, as if hiding something mysterious and dreadful. He delved into his research, collecting every available piece of information, and finally descended resolutely into the cold embrace of the earth. The light of his lantern illuminated the dark walls of the catacombs, revealing ancient symbols and inscriptions carved into the stone. Edward discovered that many of these were unfamiliar and unintelligible, but his curiosity only grew. In the depths of the underground, he encountered something strange: runes and ritual symbols painted on the walls in red. He began photographing each discovery, unaware of the horrors they might conceal. They spoke of the catacombs being used for malevolent forces that were beyond the reach of the living world. But as he unveiled more gruesome details, he started noticing something peculiar about his surroundings. Shadows seemed denser, echoes returned with an unnatural delay. Edward felt as if he was being watched, as if his research had awakened something old and sinister. He began having dreams filled with nightmares, where dark figures beckoned him, threatening him with unseen horrors. One day, engrossed in studying ritual texts, he felt a cold breeze pass by him. The light of his lantern flickered, and he saw shadows coming to life, intertwining and distorting. His heart raced, and he hurried towards the exit of the catacombs. But even on the surface, he couldn't shake the feeling that something ominous was following him. As days of research turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Edward changed. His face grew pale, his eyes filled with fear. He refused to leave his laboratory, delving deeper into the dark records. He forgot about the outside world, about time, consumed by the mysterious secrets he had uncovered. And finally, on a gloomy evening, rain flooding the city streets, Edward made a horrifying discovery. In ancient records, he found evidence that the catacombs had been used to summon a force of evil, a force beyond control. He realized that his research had awakened this ancient malevolence, and now it was free. Fear engulfed him completely, but it was already too late. The external world began crumbling, as if reality and dreams had become inseparable. The shadows he saw became living entities, pursuing him wherever he went. He heard whispers of voices, speaking of torment and fear that would soon befall the world. Edward was trapped in his own nightmare reality. He battled invisible horrors, but his mind was shattered. The forces of evil he had unleashed consumed him from within, and he became their captive. No one knew what happened to the young archaeologist, and his disappearance remained a mystery. With time, the legend of Edward Halloran became part of the city's mythology. It was said that his soul had been consumed by evil, and now he roamed the catacombs, seeking new victims to satisfy his thirst for fear. But few knew that in reality, his fate had become the very horrifying story he had intended to uncover. In the deep shadow of distant woods stood a church, shrouded in secrets and darkness. A young priest, renouncing the world, began his new duty in this secluded sanctuary. His name echoed the past, and his gaze reflected the heavy burdens he carried on his shoulders. Before his death, he entrusted his mission to the young follower, appointing him as his successor. And so, the young priest left the world of man and stepped into the enigmatic realm of churchly adventures. With the first nights in the church came strange dreams. The young priest saw himself standing before the altar, surrounded by flames and darkness. He heard inhuman whispers, invitations to powers that Christian faith abhorred. These dreams terrified him, but he tried not to pay attention to them, fortifying his faith in God. As time passed, these strange visions started bleeding into reality. Visions flickered before his eyes even in broad daylight. Within the church, he felt the presence of something unseen yet menacing. Sounds of rustling and whispers filled the air, as if the spirits were alive. One day, in search of answers, the young priest ventured into the church's basement. Amidst dusty shelves and forgotten books, he discovered ancient scrolls. Among them was a particularly special scroll, handwritten by Priest Augustine. This scroll recounted a long-forgotten cult that worshipped an ancient evil confined within the church's altar. According to the scroll, this cult existed centuries ago. Its members believed that the altar acted as a bridge between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, and the ancient evil within was a source of boundless power. The cult practiced sacrifices and dark rituals to maintain their connection with this ancient malevolence. With each word he read, the young priest realized that this cult and its rituals were the cause of the strange events occurring in the church. The spirits of the past had left their mark, and now their influence extended to him. The priest resolved to unravel the mystery and halt the ancient evil. He studied the scrolls, delved into the rituals, immersing himself in the perilous world his departed mentor had tried so hard to conceal. But the deeper he dug, the more he felt the mysterious force beginning to take hold of his own soul. Finally, the day came when the priest decided to face the ancient evil. He approached the altar armed with weapons and scrolls. Spirits swirled around him, creating a gloomy and atmospheric spectacle. Centuries melded into that moment as the priest began uttering the words from the ancient scroll. The altar gleamed with ominous light, and from within, darkness began to rise, erasing the boundary between worlds. The battle for the young priest's soul began. He fought the ancient evil within him, struggling for his faith and life. A conflict raged within him, a battle between light and darkness, past and present. The scrolls became his weapons, their words repelling the assaults of evil. Occasionally, he heard the voices of his ancestors, supporting him in this deadly struggle. Ultimately, the priest managed to tip the balance and return the evil back into the altar. With the ancient evil vanquished, the church began to shake off its dark shadow. The spirits and visions vanished, leaving behind only memories of past horrors. The young priest felt his soul healing, and the church once again became a place of worship and light. Yet the price he paid for this victory was steep. His faith had been shaken, and his soul bore scars of the past. Everything he had learned and experienced changed him forever. He realized that the forces of darkness and light would forever contend for every heart, and his task was to prevent the darkness from consuming his soul. And so concluded the tale of the Altar of Darkness, a story of the battle between good and evil, faith and doubt, past and future. And though the young priest remained scarred, he managed to bring light to a place once shrouded in darkness, leaving his mark in the eternal struggle. Nights in the Catholic cathedral were quiet, imbued with an atmosphere of sanctity and peace. Within its sacred walls, the history of faith melded, and on its altar, dozens of exquisite sculptures depicting angels and saints had found their eternal refuge. These sculptures, elegantly crafted by artists, seemed to possess their own lives in the hall, waiting awakening from the devotees who offered their prayers to them. Yet, amidst this divine beauty, there was one statue that exuded an intriguing aura, an image of a holy woman holding a sacred chalice. It lured gazes with its enigmatic eyes. When the sun dipped beyond the horizon and night cloaked the cathedral in its dark shroud, something peculiar began to occur. Nights were no longer as silent as before. Rustlings, like shadows, crept through the corridors of the cathedral, and the air was laden with an invisible tension. The living statues, as the witnesses called them, claimed that every night, the statue of the woman would come to life. At first, it seemed implausible, but with each successive night, the testimonies became more convincing. The statue came to life, gaining vitality in the darkness. Its eyes glowed with a crimson light, akin to dying embers. Slowly yet surely, it advanced, bending under the weight of ominous magic. In its hands, the chalice began to emit a glow, as if radiating the power of ancient secrets. The living statue, seemingly freed from its centuries-old dormancy, crossed the threshold of the cathedral, leaving behind traces of shimmering air. Strange events started occurring in the city at night. People vanished without a trace, leaving only horrifying accounts from witnesses of being pursued by a figure cloaked in darkness. Murders grew increasingly brutal, and evidence pointed to something supernatural. Rumors of living statues spread, inciting more fear and panic among the city's inhabitants. Amidst this turmoil was a young artist named James. He had been hired to restore the statue of the woman, and while others within the church community trembled at the night as terrors, James was intrigued. His days were spent meticulously studying the statue, and with each passing moment, he became more convinced that something inexplicable was occurring. One night, when the moon illuminated the sky, James mustered the courage to act. He hid in a corner of the cathedral, waiting for the statue to come to life. As darkness enshrouded the cathedral, he witnessed the statue's red eyes igniting, and slowly but decisively, it began to move. Clutching his brushes in his fists, James' heart raced so fast that it felt as if it might burst from his chest. The statue drew nearer, and he could see the chalice in its hands glowing brighter. He knew he had to take action, or else the dreadful evil would consume his city. As if finding an inner strength, James emerged from his hiding spot and walked toward the statue. He shouted in the name of faith, summoning his angelic protectors. His voice echoed like the tolling of bells, reverberating off the cathedral as sacred walls. The statue halted, the chalice ceasing its radiance, its gaze fixed upon James, as if past and future converged in this moment. With a force that seemed to emanate from his very core, James pressed forward. He could feel the weight of centuries of devotion and belief behind him, giving him the courage to stand against this supernatural threat. His voice quivered with determination as he recited verses from sacred texts, invoking the power of divine protection. The living statue faltered, its crimson eyes flickering as if struggling against an invisible force. The air around them crackled with an otherworldly energy, and James felt a surge of something ancient and powerful coursing through his veins. The statue's steps grew hesitant, and its grip on the chalice wavered. James knew he was facing a formidable adversary, one fueled by dark magic and centuries of pent-up anger. He understood that this was more than just a battle of physicality. It was a battle of faith, willpower, and conviction. With every ounce of his being, he projected his unwavering faith in the forces of good, the strength of the human spirit, and the divine protection that surrounded them. The living statue let out a haunting wail, a sound that seemed to be a mixture of rage and agony. Its form began to blur, as if the very essence that held it together was unraveling. James held his ground, his heart pounding, as he continued to channel his belief in the power of light to overcome darkness. And then, in a burst of blinding light, the living statue disintegrated. The chalice fell to the ground with a resounding clang, its glow extinguished. The air, once heavy with malevolence, cleared, leaving behind a palpable sense of relief and triumph. James stood there, his chest heaving, his hands still raised in a gesture of defiance. As dawn broke over the horizon, its gentle rays filtering through the stained glass windows of the cathedral, James knew that the threat had been vanquished. The city would no longer be plagued by the murderous pursuits of the living statue. With his unwavering faith and courageous actions, he had put an end to the malevolent magic that had gripped the once beautiful sculpture. In the days that followed, the city slowly regained its sense of security. The rumors of the living statues faded into the background, replaced by stories of James' bravery and his role in saving the city from an ancient evil. The restored statue of the woman now stood as a symbol of triumph over darkness, a testament to the power of faith and the resilience of humanity. And as for James, he continued his work as an artist, forever marked by the experience. He knew that there were mysteries in the world that defied explanation, but he had witnessed firsthand the extraordinary potential of the human spirit to overcome even the most sinister of forces. His faith had been tested and proven, and he had emerged from the ordeal not only as an artist but as a true defender of light in the face of darkness.